Now, there is, I suspect, a very special Hitchens archive somewhere out there in some corner of YouTube, so let me know if you find it, will you?
Is a Protestant identity organisation. It's a specifically, declaredly, avowedly Christian Protestant group. If people are going to say that biblical inspiration is allowed, how are they going to say it's only allowed in their own case?
Let's go back to the general proposition that religion poisons everything. And you do tend to argue by analogy, anecdote and example. So let me do the same thing here if I can. Like a lot of Australians, I've actually spent a good deal of time taking trips to the island of Bali over the years. And I simply find it impossible to imagine that Bali would be a better place if stripped of its religion. So I'd ask you just to talk to that, because you know, to me, it's an incredibly appealing place precisely because the rhythms of life are maintained by a religious calendar and by strict adherence to principles.
Yes, I've been to Bali too, though mainly to investigate...
I don't know if you realise that's a song, but you probably do.
But mainly to investigate religious thuggery in my case, and I went partly out of solidarity to that Australian bar in Denpasar, Paddy's. Paddy's Pub Reloaded, as it was called by then, where all the worst actions on the island were conducted by people of faith. But I do, I guess, know what you mean. There are those who say that these Eastern practices aren't really religions. I mean, it's said of Buddhism, for example, that it isn't one. I'm in two minds about this. Most Buddhists claim that they're not religious. It's not a God business. It's a spiritual practice, if you like.
Well, in Bali, 95% of the people roughly adhere to what they call the Hindu Dharma.
Yes.
It's a blend of Hinduism, Buddhism and ancestor worship.
Yes.
To not call that a religion is stretching the point.
No, I agree. I mean, it's more like, it seems to me more like a culture or a practice. I mean, what threats do they make against non-believers? We don't know. I mean, it's also very highly evolved. When you say, it's a bit like asking me, can I imagine England, my country of birth, or, okay, anywhere else in Europe, without cathedrals? No, I can't. I absolutely can't. Or rather, if I try, I don't like the idea.
Yes, but the difference is that 95% of the population don't worship in those cathedrals, whereas in Bali, people's lives are controlled and run along this religious clock.
Yes.
You know, it's the harvest. Yeah. There are even ways of worshipping your vehicles, your machinery.
Sure. Silly, but probably harmless. I guess what I say...
You wouldn't like to see it gone, though, would you?
No. What I say in my introduction is that all of that and more, better and worse, it's not I don't mind. I mean, how tolerant can I get? How nice do you want me to be? It's just that I may dislike it very much, but I don't expect people to give it up or want them to. I insist only that they leave me out of it, okay? That I don't have to know what they believe. That they don't want a subsidy from the government for it, that they don't try and teach it to my children, that they don't expect me to have to live under it in any way, then that's all absolutely fine. But therefore, for me, the test of religion is in a way whether it proselytizes or not. And it seemed to me in Bali that if there ever was a time when they did that, they'd given it up. I'm sure there was a time of terrible spiritual and religious warfare in that part of the world. It can't have been the only part of the world where there never was.
The Balinese actually ran from an Islamic invasion. That's why they exist.
I mean, there's that too. But I mean, I bet between different Buddhist and Hindu groups, there have been terrible episodes of homicide, and worse. There are some parts of the world where they've calmed down and got over it. But it doesn't entitle us to forget what religion was like when it thought it could get away with it.
Okay, but I mean...
Anyway, my principle is absolutely one of coexistence and even of cultural admiration, as long as the fangs are drawn. And if you say they've been drawn in Bali, good on them.
It just sort of goes against the idea that religion poisons everything, which is your basic point. Perhaps it's a rhetorical point.
Well, you're describing a culture and praising it, as far as I know justly, to precisely the extent to which it doesn't resemble really a religion. Now, is that me having it both ways? I mean...
It certainly resembles a religion to me, and I would say probably to the majority of the Balinese people. But
what do you get if you cross a Jehovah's Witness with a Unitarian? Someone who comes and knocks on your door for no particular reason. Unitarians are religious too. They say their apparent belief is one God at the most. I don't have the energy for a real quarrel with them, but I mean, I don't terrifically respect it either. As long as, all I ask is that it leaves me alone.
Let's bring the principle closer to home, and to our home here, I mean. Let's look at another example. There's a place called the Oasis here in Sydney. It's a shelter for young homeless people. It was a subject of a very moving documentary not so long ago. And from that it's clear that the heart and soul of this place is a Salvation Army captain called Paul Moulds and his wife. Now they're non-judgmental as far as I can see. They don't seem to be pushing their religion. Essentially they practice their faith by helping others. So can that be poisonous?
No, but in what sense in that case is it religious? Again, you're saying these people are so nice they're hardly religious at all. You're making... You took care to pick the example where their faith had nothing to do with it. No, we're not mentioning any of that.
It's not clear at all.
We just like running orphanages. Now, I'll just tell you something. Most people of faith who like running orphanages aren't that nice. And I know that Australia is one of the places where I don't need to underline that. So again, if you're going to accept or claim the one, you have to take on the other. Whereas, I'll give you an example. I like giving blood, okay? It's not that I think I should, and that I was brought up in the idea of the National Health Service, but I actually positively enjoy it. More than shedding it. I find it a pleasurable, relaxing experience, and I get pleasure from the idea that the National Health Service, or wherever I am, isn't going to run out of blood. And I don't lose a pint, because I regrow it quite quickly, but someone else gets one. I like that. There's a great book by an old socialist called Peter Titmuss called The Gift Relationship, about how people like to help and they get positive benefit to themselves from helping other people. And I also have a very rare blood group indeed, and I want to make sure that when it's my turn to hemorrhage, there's enough blood around the place. Why make a strenuous thing of it? I don't say, and by the way, vote for my party now, or come over to my team, or so. No, I've just done a good thing for its own sake. How about that?
Okay.
And the sake includes my own, and it is the human species we're talking about.
As a test of your principle, then, I'm going right back to where we started here because you went on a bit of a tangent. But just sticking to these people, sticking to Captain Moulds and his wife just for a moment. I mean, they are people of faith. That is what drives them to do what they do 24 hours a day. Okay, they're not proselytizing.
Right.
And perhaps that's the thing that for you lets them off the hook. But in fact, they are still religious, and they are evidently doing something good. So I'm simply saying your principle doesn't hold up in that case.
Well, I don't know enough about them to be sure about that. Not trying to be funny, I don't know. But I mean, if there's a motive apart from for its own sake, then I would be inclined to suspect it, however ostensibly sweet they were. Yes, I would say that. If there's a hint of proselytization, if they're so careful to point out they're not doing it, I wonder why they're so keen to disclaim something.
I just don't know.
But I mean, you know, I give my money to charities like Médecins Sans Frontières or Amnesty International that go and help my fellow creatures without any supernatural inducement or consideration.
Okay, this sort of brings us back to, and we talked about this the other night, but it brings us back to why people seek solace in religion. The killer quote, of course, came from Karl Marx. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, he said it so clearly and so well. And doesn't that sort of at least demonstrate why it's still today in existence?
Well, and to complete the quotation, which is from the introduction to his critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, he goes on to say, criticism of religion is necessary, criticism has plucked the flowers from the